the US dollar will no longer be the world's medium of exchange in the international currency. Everybody knows what the world's international currency is supposed to be. Anybody can use it for anything. But now Washington, in the last few years, has started putting sanctions on people. Daniel, it is ruining America, ruining parts of America, because now everybody is frantically looking for something to compete with the dollar. The Chinese, the Russians, the Indians, the Brazilians, the Iranians are all working as fast as they can to come up with something to compete with the US dollar for political reasons, also economic reasons. I mean, America is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, but we're shooting ourselves in the foot every day. This means that now, sooner than it would have been, that's not good for the US. It certainly was not good for Britain, which used to be the world's international currency. When they lost that status, well, they lost a lot of things.
It makes me think of a recent quote I read from Charlie Munger, who said he's working with the thesis that in 100 years' time, there will be no US dollar.
Well, no currency has lasted forever. No number one currency has ever lasted forever. If you go back and look at history, we've had international currencies, or the world's medium of exchange. Maybe they lasted 80 years, 100 years, 150 years max. They've all changed. It's changed over and over and over ever since the beginning of time. The US has been on top for a while, but now, as I said, we are the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. And now we will not let the US dollar stay neutral. Now we're using it as a political or an instrument of war. So that means nobody in his right mind who thinks they might cross the US someday is going to want to use US dollars. I don't think I'm ever going to cross the US dollar, the US, the State Department, but I worry. Now I got to figure out something else, some other place to keep my money. The US dollar will no longer be the world's medium of exchange in the international currency.
Jim, do you think whatever comes next and replaces it will be in the form of a digital dollar in whatever currency?
Every country's working on it, including the US, Washington, D.C. So soon all money's going to be on the computer, but I am sure, Daniela, when the money's here and Washington says, okay, this is money now, I don't think that the bureaucrats in Washington will say, okay, but if you want to use somebody else's money, you want to use those things over there, you can. Bureaucrats don't like to lose control. They don't like to lose power. They don't like to lose monopoly.
Looking at oil prices, they're nearing 100% gain year over year, and gasoline prices in the US reached over $4 and the highest level since 2008. So I was reading that in recent cycles, when oil gained 100% in a one-year period, including 2008, a recession occurred. Do fears of a recession concern you?
Of course, it's been 12 years since we had the last recession in the US. That's the longest in American history. So we're overdue just on a time basis. I mean, it could last 20 years. Who says couldn't go on forever, but it never has. So I am sure, because of inflation higher, which will drive interest rates higher, we're going to have a recession in the foreseeable future. I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just telling them that's the way it's always worked since the beginning of time. So yes, we're going to have a recession, probably fairly soon. You should read Stansberry. They'll tell you when the recession's coming. They're smarter than I am. And when the recession comes, a lot of us are going to get hurt. I hope I survive. I hope we all survive, but some people are going to get hurt.
I believe you recently said, Jim, that once the war's over, the stock market could see another hurrah, but then there'd be a downturn events.
Well, that's my view. I'm not good at market timing, but my view is something is going to cause this thing in Ukraine to calm down fairly soon. It's not doing Putin any good. It's not doing anybody any good. So who knows what? If he can find a way to save face, things will stop. That will lead to a big rally, especially since central banks are not so aggressive right now. We'll have the big rally. It'll be the last rally. I hope that if it works that way, that I'm smart enough to sell that last rally. It'll probably be a big rally, because then people say, gosh, nothing can win the stock market now. And then it'll be the end.
Well, let's look at commodities, Jim. Obviously, you're probably the greatest commodities expert on the planet. Everything from wheat to nickel, gold, as we're speaking right now, over $2,000 an ounce. Everything's soaring in the commodity space. How long does this go on for?
Well, probably for a while now. Commodities have had a decade or so where they were in the tank for many reasons, while people were putting their money into bonds and stocks and property in some countries. I would suspect, since supply and demand have gotten out of whack in most commodities, that the commodity bull market will last a long time. They're printing a lot of money. They're going to continue to print money. Money printing has always led to inflation, and if you own the things that go up in price, you do well. Plus, there are fundamental changes taking place in the world. Electric cars use 4 times or several times as much copper and lead as regular cars. So the demand for a lot of stuff is going to be going up, and nobody's been opening lead mines or copper mines in a long time, Daniela. So we're going to see higher prices.
Jim, you mentioned inflation. And we know the dangers of inflation, how it's brought down democracies. Do you think that the Fed is downplaying the crisis of inflation that we find ourselves in?
The Fed is a crisis, yes. The Fed has rarely been right about anything in the history of the Federal Reserve. What is it, 110 years old almost now? They've rarely been right about anything. They told us that there was no inflation, then they said it was transitory. I don't pay that much. I don't know what they're saying now. Throughout history, money printing and borrowing and spending huge amounts of money has always led to inflation. We're going to have inflation now. It's going to get worse. It won't go up every day, but it's going to get worse. And that's going to lead to higher interest rates, and it's going to lead to profit erosion in some industries and some companies. And all of us are going to have to pay more for a loaf of bread or whatever we buy.
Just on U.S. equities a second, Jim, when you do see that correction coming, what kind of forecasts are you eyeing for U.S. equities?
Well, there'll be a big collapse. If it works the way I said, we have a big rally, one last big rally. Everybody needs to get knowledgeable. You can watch Stansberry, read Stansberry, whatever you have to do to get knowledgeable. Please get knowledgeable, because we're going to have some very complicated times in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. A lot of countries and people are going to go bankrupt. But if you're knowledgeable about what's going on, you will become prepared. And if you get prepared, you might make a lot of money. A lot of people made a lot of money in the 30s, Daniela. It was a horrible economic disaster, but a lot of people came out of it rich. The key is to be prepared, know what you're doing. Don't listen to hot tips, and just invest in what you yourself know a lot about. But a lot of people, and I hope I do survive, but a lot of people are not going to survive the next bear market.